Rionne, thank you for taking the time to be here. I mean, this afternoon.
Yeah.
Because it's afternoon. Let's start off with this. This is my first time meeting you, but you have been such a loyal subscriber.
Yeah.
It seems like you look at everything I put out. You always at least click like on everything I put out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you put some really great stuff, so I'm trying to keep up.
And now I hear the Irish accent.
A little bit, yeah. Well, my father is, we call him a 10-pound pom. And a pom is a prisoner of Mother England. That's what Australians call British people.
Exactly.
Poms. So my father was a pom. He's a P-O-M-E, a pommy.
Wow.
And he went to Australia in 1970 something for 10 pounds.
Okay.
Which is what, I don't know, maybe $100
Okay,
at the time.
all right.
And that was it.
Because they were asking them to come over.
There were mass immigration.
Mass immigration at that time. It was 1960 something? What year?
Late 60s, early
60s,
70s.
right, exactly.
And just, he went to England, Australia, and never came home. Just like me.
You were born, where were you born?
I'm Australian.
You're Australian?
Australian, born and raised in Australia.
But you're Irish all the way through.
Irish, English, Australian.
Sound like a pirate. Wait just a minute. But I was watching yours, because you sent me your Facebook page. Mm-hmm. You're a pro wrestler?
Yeah. I'm one of those guys that can tell you can do anything in life at any age.
And you're about to do it.
Yeah.
You're showing it by going through examples.
Well, I became a pro wrestler when I was 30 years old, which is probably about 10 years too late. And
how old are you now?
41.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I thought you were in your 20s.
No, man. 41, born in 1981, be 42 soon.
Look at you. Well, you're taking good care of yourself.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the wrestler in me. But that's martial arts more. I've been doing martial arts since I was 7.
Aikido?
Aikido, first karate.
Okay.
Karate first, and then Aikido. My dad teaches Aikido.
Okay.
So that's the whole Japan connection. I mean, I can tell you the whole martial arts.
Let's start through this. Where were you born in Australia?
Born in Sydney.
In Sydney?
In Sydney, Australia.
That's the only place I've visited so far,
It's
and
a
I
beautiful,
loved it.
beautiful place. But we left when I was 3.
Okay.
And we moved up to Queensland, the Gold Coast, which is heaven on earth for me.
Isn't it?
It's the beaches are amazing. It's like Australian Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not so expensive.
Right.
Right.
And you stayed there all your life until what age?
Until 19.
Had you ever left it before
No,
19?
just to the UK a few times, because I got dual citizenship with the UK and Australia.
Okay.
So I went like 3 times.
Right.
You know, my dad set me over myself once.
Okay. You have siblings?
3 younger sisters.
You're the only boy?
Yeah, and well, I have a half brother in the UK that I didn't meet till I was 35 years old.
How many years difference between you and him?
He's 14 years older than me. So he'd be 55 now. And I didn't meet him for the first time in my life, until 6 years ago. It was crazy. Like I had this guy with the same name as me, McAvoy.
Which your father named him? Oh, you mean last name?
Last name, sorry.
That's right.
Same last name as me, but just had never met him. And then finally, because he had my father and his mother broke up when he was 14, and his mother married a South African.
Okay.
And took him to South Africa for half of his life, and he finally moved back to the UK, and that's where I got to meet him. You know,
so he was with your father till he was 14 years old.
And then.
So he knows his father. He knows his father is his father.
Yeah.
I bet you got really rebellious when they broke up. I bet you he was at 14 years old.
14 is a difficult time to.
It is very difficult. Your hormones are kicking in and everything.
And that was during the apartheid in South Africa when he moved over there as a immigrant.
A lot of turmoil going on.
Yeah. In South Africa, it was tough. It was really tough for him. He said.
Oh, so when you guys had that conversation, you brought that up?
Brought that up a lot, you know, and dealing with multicultures is nothing for him. Mm-hmm. Dealing with African people, he lived with them there every day. They're his friends.
But prior to that, he didn't. So what was it like? It was a culture shock for him because he was 14 already.
Yeah.
So he wasn't used to being around Africans.
Well, he was used to being in Australia and the UK.
That's right,
of
course.
Yeah. Well, he speaks Afrikaans and.
African?
Yeah, he speaks it. No, I don't know how fluently, but
he understands it.
He understands it. He speaks it a little bit, and but I mean, I have 3 sisters, younger sisters.
Okay, so what's the age difference between your 3 younger sisters?
I'm born in 1981. The next one is 1983. But
it's 2 years. Okay.
2 years. But when she was born, due to negligence and malpractice, she was born normal, but the doctor decided to take off, and she got brain damage purely from. So she's just turned 40, but forever 4.
I understand.
Forever 4.
That's sad. Okay.
So I even tear up a little bit now about it, you know.
I understand. Yes.
But that's life. She's as happy as as she doesn't know any different. She's the happiest person in the world, always smiling. She calls me every day, without fail. I gave her an iPhone for her birthday about 3 years ago. Without fail at 5 p.m. She calls me every day. And we talk for like 1 minute. That's it, just 1 minute. Because I don't know if maybe her attention span, she can't deal with that, but it's like, hi Rionne! And then she gives me her schedule, what she did for the day.
Okay.
I did this, I did this, I did this. And what did you do? And she's like, I gotta go, see ya.
But who's she living in a?
She lives in a shared facility with two other girls.
Okay, but did you grow up with her?
Yeah, of course. She moved there about 8 years ago.
Oh, I see.
She was with my mother for a long time.
So your next sister?
85, so 4 years younger.
Okay.
And she was a single mother as well, who went through a really hard time.
Right. We're gonna get to that.
We're gonna get to that. Sorry, I said as well, but
okay.
She's a single mother, and she went through a really hard time. That was my first introduction to how hard single mothers have it. Seeing her.
Are you close to her?
Oh, well, I've been here for so long in Japan. It's hard to be close, but I mean we talk and we message and and then the baby is well, she's not a baby anymore. She's not a baby anymore, but she's 30. She's still the baby for us.
Does she have kids of her own?
No, but she probably will soon. She's getting ready to, I think, at that stage of her life She's 88, so just turned 35. 35 this year.
88, she's 30, she'll be 35 this year.
35 this year, but she's, as we say in Australia, getting clucky.
But I can imagine what that means. Okay.
Well, chickens, because we used to have a small chicken farm in Australia.
Okay.
So it was my job every morning in Australia, when I'd wake up before I go to school, I'd have to go down and open up the chicken house. And because in Australia, it's he who dares wins of wild animals.
Okay.
Snakes,
that's right,
big
right.
goannas,
Spiders,
lizards.
everything, yes.
So I would have to open the hen house and look in for, we call them goannas, which are giant lizards. Like about.
That are poisonous?
Poisonous. Well, they bite you, and then every time around that year, wherever you're getting bitten, once a year, something swells up in wherever you're bitten.
Okay.
So what we used to do is we used to mark the chicken eggs with X's. We put poison in there because they target the clucky chickens, and a clucky chicken is a chicken that wants to have babies.
I see.
Right. So that's a clucky chicken. So. Okay. Every morning, and like carpet snakes, massive 3-4 meter long carpet snakes just rolling in. Look out my window and kangaroos are jumping outside, koalas everywhere. I mean, we lived in a pretty big 1 acre property in Australia where there was wild animals everywhere. We grew up with wild animals, you know that in wintertime, if there's a big hole in the ground, you're safe because the snake's sleeping down there.
Okay.
But once it starts to get warm, and it gets very warm in Australia,
right,
that snake's coming out.
Right.
So,
my goodness. Okay, now take me to the third sister, the youngest.
Third sister. They all lived in the UK, and they moved back to Australia, and they're doing their thing. And
okay.
Yeah, she's married. They're both married. Well, the other one just got remarried. The woman that was a single mother.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. But you're kind of good with all your sisters. You're the older brother.
Older brother. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But you know what? I've been here so long that I kind of became maybe not half Japanese, but a little bit Japanese in like the way I think, like time is the time, and if you say you're gonna do something, you do it. And Australia's like, well, 1 o'clock means 2 o'clock.
It might mean 2 o'clock. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. But I generally try not to be an overbearing big brother. Just give them big brother advice when they don't listen anyway. But
so tell me, what kind of kid were you when you were growing up? I mean, I understand the fact that you lived on this large property with all of nature around you all the time. Were you had to, by force, I guess, just by nature, you had to be very outdoors like?
Okay, so what happened was my entire introduction in Japan probably started when I was 7, right? I went to a school camp. I went to a public school, and I was 7 years old, and for some stupid reason, there was a 12-year-old boy, and he was a very large boy, and for whatever reason, stupid little 7-year-old me said, "Hey, fatso." I don't know why. Okay. I was never that kind of kid.
But he was fat.
He was fat.
Okay.
But that I was not really that kind of kid. But for whatever reason, and he just turned around and he just whacked me.
All right.
And my entire face, got swollen. And my dad came home and he was doing martial arts for a long time. And he'd done it in the UK and he was doing it in Australia. And he took one look at me and he said, "Did you fight back?" And I was like, "Huh? What?" I mean, he's so big.
What's the concept?
And so old. And that's the old school Northern English kind of way of thinking, and I wouldn't personally, if I had a son, I wouldn't say, "Did you fight back?" But that was his upbringing, and that's how he wanted to raise me. And well, no, sir. Okay, we'll put you into martial arts school, and so that's I was started karate
At 7.
at 7. Yep.
So what
and,
happened? When was the first time you said, "Oh, this stuff really works"? Did you use
I was in the Australian junior team, national team.
when was this? How old were you then?
About 12.
Okay, so you've been doing martial arts for about 5 years.
Yeah, and already. Actually, no. Well, it was taekwondo at the time.
Taekwondo, okay.
And then I joined karate when I was 14. Sorry, my mistake.
All right.
So I was in the Australian junior taekwondo team.
Right.
And they were trying to go to the Olympics, but they said, like, we got to wait like 3 more years, 4 more years. It's not an Olympic sport yet. Just wait. And my dad was like, well, we're not waiting. Right. Well, that's why he put me in karate.
Okay.
So I was training in an Australian, like, training on squad.
I understand.
I'll never, like, on a rugby field,
Okay.
like about 100 people, like potential future Olympians
Olympians,
that they
right.
were just looking for, you know,
ones that really had the
ones that had it. And when I got to the peak as a child, he ripped me back and said, "Nope, start you again." I
In
started
karate?
in karate, so I was like second dan black belt in as a child in taekwondo, and then he said, "Nope, back to white belt." When I went started all over again, and yeah, and
Which do you like best? If you think.
it
about
doesn't. It's 6 1/2 of the other. I think
Okay.
really it's Korean versus
Right,
Japan.
Right.
But you know, as a kid, I started watching a lot of basketball more and really got into the NBA and you know East West Coast rap, and you know you get caught up in it as a child and all that kind of stuff. And I threw karate out the door. I don't want to do it anymore. I just want to play basketball.
What age?
16.
Okay.
Now, my dad didn't talk to me for a year.
Wait. So from 7 until 14 almost.
14 almost. Yep. First grade of junior high, so
Right.
13. Doing taekwondo.
Taekwondo. And then after that, then just for another 2 years or 3 years.
2 or 3 years of
Please,
karate, and then
you said, "I'm done."
I'm done.
And Dad said, "Guess what?
Guess what?
You're not my son."
Yeah, pretty much.
Really?
Yeah.
So what'd you do?
But it wasn't as nice as what you were just saying.
I see what you're saying.
It was borderline mental abuse. You know, like it's just his generation, I suppose.
I understand.
Like hardcore. Like you're useless. You're nothing. You can't do this. You can't.
So
do
how
that.
did you handle that? How did you handle
I
that?
just cried with my mom. She couldn't stand up to him, and he's not a bad guy. It's
I
just,
understand what you're saying. It's the time.
It's just that he's 80 now. He grew up in he born in 1942 during the war.
But you told me she was a lot younger than him too.
He is 10 years younger.
Okay,
yeah,
10 years
yeah,
younger,
my
okay.
mother, sweetheart, absolute sweetheart.
Good. And they're both doing well now?
Yeah, well, they separated.
Oh, they
but,
did?
Yeah, they separated, but that's
How
okay.
old were you when they separated?
Oh, it was only 15 years ago, so I was
Oh,
here in
okay.
Japan, so.
So they stayed together all
For the children.
They did, I see.
For the children.
I see.
Then when everyone flies the nest, then they went on their own.
Did he get married again?
Yes, he did. He actually married a Chinese woman.
Does he have kids by her?
No.
What about your mother? Did she get
No,
married?
she
again?
never got remarried.
Okay.
She lives with her dog, and and that's it. And she gets a little bit lonely sometimes, so I try to call her. And
What about what about her daughters? Do they live close by her?
no, she wanted to get far away from when you divorce someone, it's time to.
Oh, because they stayed over close by their dad.
Yeah, they stayed. They stayed.
Because they're daddy's babies.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So, but a funny story is that, 16 I quit. 19, I don't know if you ever remember the very first internet chat rooms back in the day. There was one called ICQ,
Okay.
and it was the very first ever internet chat program. Just looking on there one day, and I saw my sensei's daughter from the karate days on there. I was like, oh my God, that's Bianca. I had a massive crush on her as a teenager. From 14 to 16, massive. It's his sensei's daughter. I mean, who didn't have a crush on her? And I started talking to her, and she's like, "Come down to the dojo. That'd be great to see you again." And I'll be honest with you, I did not go down to the dojo to join karate. I went down there to see
Bianca.
See Bianca. Within 30 minutes, their mother had signed me up to karate. I had signed without even knowing what I was doing. I couldn't say no. I had rejoined karate with no intention of doing it.
Age
19.
19.
Less than 6 months later, I was champion of my state.
Did Bianca? Had you kindled something with Bianca?
No, nothing ever happened.
Nothing?
Nothing ever happened. No, that's okay.
Okay, that's okay.
That's life. But that was, it's like, gee, it brings back memories. Like thinking of that.
So what would your father say then?
He came down to watch when I was fought in the championships. You can imagine like Cobra Kai. It was like Cobra Kai.
I understand.
The Old Valley
Right,
tournament.
right.
That I won. as an orange belt.
Yes.
But because it was in my blood. It was in my, since I was a kid. And I saw him at the top, the very bleachers.
Oh, you noticed him.
I saw him up there.
You didn't know he was coming.
I didn't know he was coming. No. And he snuck in and he was watching like that. And he was like, oh. And afterwards he was like, because he used to come to all my matches when I was a kid. I used to video them. And he'd even be like, kind of like a coach. He'd be like, kick his ass, kick his ass. Because I used to have to fight against the adults when I was 14, 15. Like, you know, like young men, for 20, 21-year-olds. Right? Because that's just the way it was. We fought against older people. And he had it in my mind, kill him. Like he was like a coach on the side. And we still got all the video they used to take. He was very proud of me. So it probably really broke his heart when I said at 16, you know, I'm done with this, you know. But he was there. And so I know that it kind of...
You kindled in his heart.
A little bit.
Anyway.
But then came to Japan and for karate, an 8-week trip, and that was the first time I'd been here.
Wait, during that time?
Yeah, right around that time.
Okay.
Yeah. I was playing Yahoo Checkers online with my best friend from Australia, and he was in Japan. And as a joke, he said to me, why don't you come to Japan? As a joke back, I said, why don't you lend me the money? Because I was just a poor student. And he said, I'll lend you the money. I was like, what? And he's like, I'll put it in, but you got to pay me back. I was like, well, yeah, of course I'll pay you back. And 3 days later, my flight money was in the bank. And then a week later, I was here. Completely random.
Staying with him?
Yeah, staying with him out in Saitama. He was a student here. And I did an 8-week trip for karate. I trained like 3 days a week. And I only stayed 8 weeks, but that was the beginning of falling in love with Japan. And since that time, I've been here, I was 19, so 20 out of 22 years.
What about your schooling? Wait. What about college and all that other stuff? Did you go?
I was a first-year IT student at the time.
In Australia?
In Australia. And at the end of that first year, I came to visit him. And when I went back to start my second year, I had nothing else in my head but Japan.
You wanted to get back here?
Just wanted to get back here. Because Japan is a country where you can invent yourself. You can be anything you want in Japan. You can be the poorest, skinniest guy, but Japanese are so kind. And they give you so many opportunities, and I invented myself here. I was not this guy that you see now. That's not the guy that came here, right? I'm not just some guy out of the front's like, man, you're so buff. One of the staff here. I was like, I'm not a buff. I was never a buff pro wrestler.
You were a little skinny guy.
A skinny little 100-pound, kid.
Martial artist.
Yeah, well, doing martial arts. I don't know if I was a martial artist, but doing it. And Japan has been kind to me.
So when you came over here, your impression was what? You had no experience with Japan other than the martial arts.
Yep.
That's all you
Never
had.
talked to a Japanese.
None of your instructors were Japanese.
No, all Australian. Well, my instructor was Japanese, but I had never met him.
Okay.
So.
So what was the thing that captured you when you came here that you said, wow, I want more of that?
The first 2 days, I just wanted to go home. When I first got here, I was like, I'm so homesick. But after that day 3 or 4, I was like, oh my God, this place rocks. And
well, how? What was it?
I don't know. It felt home. I can't really put my finger on it.
You're in a small tatami mat room. You're sharing it with your buddy.
Well, the first thing was you get to meet so many different people from so many different countries, like your Swedish guys, Americans, English.
Which you hadn't done before.
No, because in Australia it's just Australians. That's it. Like you don't.
You had kangaroos too.
Kangaroos and crocodiles if you go to the right.
And camels if you live in the right place, right?
If you go to the right places, you can meet any kind of animal in Australia. But yeah, so just you got to meet different people, and I'm not gonna lie. 19, you discover Roppongi for the first time, and
and the girls are there,
yeah,
and they're sweet,
and I was a little.
And everyone's laughing and smiling.
Everyone's
all the time.
smiling and everyone's friendly, and you can get drunk and
and
feel safe and walk home, and you see a Japanese guy doing his little platform pizza, and everybody's just laughing. Oh, are you okay? Are you okay? And there's no violence. There was, there was still some problems with my father. He never got over the fact that I quit karate at what he thought was my best time. Okay. Even though I went back, he never accepted me really going back. We never talked about it. And so there's a kind of like, I'm gonna go out and be my own man, because he had said things like, he said some horrible things that he didn't mean, and we're good now, but he said like, you're useless. You're
and
never
to a child that can be very devastating. Yes.
You're never gonna be anything. You're nobody.
Right.
And he even said once like, why can't you be more like the school captain? That captain ended up getting arrested for stealing cars later on. But that was my real motivation to make something of myself, and also the thing that I can always remember doing martial arts growing up in the 80s, watching the 80s action stars like Jean-Claude Van Damme, you know, Chuck Norris, Steven Seagal. Oh my God, I want to be like these guys. That's where my filmmaking stuff came in. You know, like my martial arts, my wrestling, and my filmmaking, everything is tangled together. Everything is combined. I'm not a wrestler without the filmmaking. I'm not a martial artist without the wrestling. They're all connected. You know?
So tell me, okay, so when did you know that started to happen? Because you didn't plan it that way.
From a very early age, I was either going to be an action star or a pro wrestler. I'm talking like 8 or 9 years old. Everything I ever done in my life, ever, was to be an action star on the screen or a pro wrestler. I tried the action stuff first. I made some short films, and I quickly realized, well, what happened was I wrote a script.
This is why you're in Australia?
No, I'm in Japan. I've been in Japan 20 of the last 22 years.
Wait,
right?
okay, so you couldn't realize any of this until you came here?
Yes.
Okay, so when you got here, then tell me, okay, so how did it start?
Okay, well, so you asked about my schooling.
Right.
Right, so we'll go back to the schooling very quickly. So first year student IT, quit, didn't want to do any more of it, but did my second year anyway, but I just couldn't handle it anymore, and I left to go back to Japan without finishing my final exams. Just didn't sit the exams. I just didn't want to do anything with school. I got a letter of academic warning, your grades are so low, we're going to kick you out of the school. I said, okay, well, I'm going to take some time off and please put me on. And so then I was here for 18 months as a Nova teacher, if you remember the old Nova, Ekimai Novas.
Yes.
But I was also the youngest ever Nova teacher at 20. They even told me that in orientation, you're the youngest guy we've ever hired. Well, why did you hire me? Well, we saw your passion for how much you wanted to come to Japan. But somewhere through that, due to my friend being a student here, I had realized that I need to really learn Japanese really fast, right? Because everyone around me spoke pretty decently. So I ended up finding a homestay as a Nova teacher. I quit Nova, joined this homestay, and lived with a Japanese family for 9 months, and went from 0 to about 30% very quickly, because there's no English. And then I realized, well, you know what? If I want to live in Japan, I need a degree. I better go back to school, but I don't want to do IT anymore, so I just did Japanese as a language as a major and history as a minor. Second year, I came back here as an exchange student, and I went to Japanese university for a year. We didn't do much study. You know, I was getting credits for joining the basketball class and the tennis classes and stuff like that. But you just got to be immersed. All the school cared about was that you're immersed in Japan because you're there. Then went back very quickly, finished my third year, got my nice little degree. And
in what?
In Japanese, major in Japanese language and minor in history. And straight back, flew the coop straight away, back to Japan, and been here ever since. That's the end of 2005. So that's the schooling in a nutshell.
But did you have intentions of being here permanently?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
You never wanted to live back. Even now, you're thinking you want to be here indefinitely?
I don't know if Japan is a nice place for old peoples, as so to speak. I think I'd rather go live on the beach in my senior years, but I see no reason to leave.
I see.
At the moment. The film stuff is taking
Would
off.
you go back to Australia if you went?
Probably. Okay. I'd like to open a dojo there, a martial arts school in Australia. Yeah. There. But anyway, so where are we? We got the schooling is finished. We covered that.
Yes.
From 8 or 9 years old, I always knew I wanted to be an action star or a pro wrestler, like we were saying. I wrote a script. An American guy said, "I'll direct it. You can be the star." I had no idea what I was doing. I had never touched a camera before. I lie, actually. My father had bought a big TV camera when I was a little kid to film his martial arts classes. That's why I said everything's combined. Everything's intertwined. I was filming his martial arts classes as a boy with a big, massive TV camera, which is total overkill for a kid, you know? But so filming martial arts, touching cameras, it's doing martial arts, seeing my dad use the camera, everything is, you see what I mean? Like everything is intertwined. I'm not one without the other. Right.
You weren't shy about it. You had access to it, not realizing that someday you'd actually be doing this. And so when you had a chance to do it for real, you said, "Yeah, I've been doing it."
Yeah. Yeah. So I wrote this script. I asked this American guy that I was teaching martial arts to direct it, and he said, "I'll direct it." And we shot one day of stuff. I knew how to roughly use a camera somewhat, but I was not a director. I didn't know how to act. And then he had visa problems and he had to leave. And he said, "Here's your project." And I have this project with like 6 or 7 Japanese actors on it. Suddenly, I had to do everything by myself. I hadn't a clue what to do. But we finished it. And it's still on YouTube. It's funny. It's not bad for what it was. But I had to teach myself basically everything about filmmaking because I was forced to do it. Okay, so this guy's now, he's gone. He's not going to edit it for me. So who's going to edit it? Well, I better learn how to edit, right? And I quickly realized as well, I ain't no actor. I realized that from this first short film, I ain't no actor. You know, the Japanese, they have this saying called a daikon actor, right? It's like a radish. I don't know why they call it a radish actor.
I haven't heard that, but go on.
Daikon yakusha, that means you're just a really terrible actor. And, you know, like my wife said, no, you're a daikon yakusha. And I was like, you know what? I really am more suited to behind the camera. Because I had to take his role. So I was like on it, behind it, doing everything else. And then I realized, you know what? I had an epiphany. You know what? No more on-screen stuff. Let's focus behind the screen. But I still had that idea, passion to be the wrestler.
Mm-hmm. So how'd that start?
How'd that start?
And how old were you when you started? Because I mean, when I looked at your Facebook page and I saw all those scenes of you jumping off the ropes, being on the ropes, holding the belt, and all these guys you're with. Some of them are that big guy you were against, that sumo wrestler. I'm going, is this? I said, I can't be meeting this guy because this is unreal.
Yeah.
You did all that, and I thought you were a lot bigger because the guys you're with.
Yeah, no, I'm not very. I'm 5'9".
5'9", yes.
That
shocked me.
If I put my Tom Cruise boots on, I could probably get to 5'10". He's got his magic boots, but it was just from doing it as a kid. Martial arts. The martial arts helped. The history of Japanese wrestling in a nutshell. Japan loses World War II. Tokyo is destroyed. Other places around us are destroyed. Japanese people are mentally and physically, their morale is absolutely demolished. They need to pick themselves up. The Americans are smart. They know the Japanese need to pick themselves up. They bring a circus act in of pro wrestlers. But who are we going to use for wrestlers? We don't have any wrestlers. Well, we'll take this sumo guy. We'll take this judo guy. We'll use this karate guy. But we need to make a star because we need the Japanese wrestlers, one of them, to beat the big white man. That's what it was. The Sharp brothers were some of the first earlier ones. They came over from America. And the whole point of the whole wrestling to start off was we need to boost morale in Japan, right? Because we need to get this country moving again. So they bring in, and that was the prerequisite. You had to be big, preferably a white guy, but big. It didn't matter if you couldn't wrestle because anyway, the Japanese were going to beat you. That was preferably the time in the 50s. And they used pro wrestling to boost the morale of the country. TV became a big thing in Japan because of pro wrestling, but my point of this is that Japanese pro wrestling is not like the US, where it's basically you learn a few moves in the US, but you got to really learn how to talk. You got to be charismatic. You got to know how to do the mic and the slams. In Japan, there's none of that. Japan it's the fight to the death. It's still the spirit of the fight. So it's basically still kind of martial arts. So I already had my foot in the door having done martial arts, right? And then I was still looking for that angle. Like I said, everything that I had done in my life was only to do two things, was to be a filmmaker or a pro wrestler. So I was always looking for a way to get in. And then one of my friends, like rest in peace, Eric, he was an American that passed away in Tokyo, but he was a kickboxer. And he said to me about 28, when I was 28, he said, you know what, like I know you really want to be a pro wrestler and I know that you're doing aikido right now, but you know what, in Japan, kickboxers do MMA, MMA guys do pro wrestling guys do MMA. That's all intertwined. So why don't you come down to my kickboxing dojo? You never know what's going to happen. And I said, yeah, okay, why not? I haven't done karate for a while. I need to get my kicks back up again. I was in there for about a year, and there was a fortune teller in there, a Japanese woman. And she says to me in the dojo, I'll read your palms and I'll do your turrets for you. It was so random. It was so completely random. But this is how, when the dominoes fall in your favor, they fall. And I said, okay, so read my palms. And she reads my palms. Reads my turrets. Oh, you're not doing what you want to do in life. What do you want to do? I always wanted to be a pro wrestler. And she's like, what? Why didn't you say something earlier? She said, I know this guy, and this guy. And she hooked me up with one dude. I'll never forget. I had worked for Bank of America Merrill Lynch for a year, and that wasn't going too well. I was not really a kind of finance guy. And I'm sitting there one day at my desk with my old flip phone. I was like, do I send this email to him? I want to be a pro wrestler, sir. You know, the old flip phones. Sir, I'd love to be a pro wrestler. Because that means you got to go all in.
That's right.
If you want to be a pro wrestler, you got to go in. So at 29 years old, sat there at my desk and I was like, you know what? Send it. And cut a long story short, at 30, I never forget, I stood in the ring with all these young kids, early 20s, mid 20s. Right. I bowed and I said, well, I'm 30 years old and I know I'm a lot older than you guys, but yoroshiku onegaishimasu.
You said that?
Yep.
Did they understand you?
They understood. I said it in Japanese.
Oh, okay,
they understood it.
Okay.
They understood it. Right. And they looked at me like, who's this old guy? Because for them, I must have been super old at 30. And they were 21, 22, and I had a dream, and my dream was to be a pro wrestler in Japan. Well, anyway, but I was in Japan, so.
How long did it last?
I'm still doing it now.
Oh, you're still doing it now?
But not so much.
So how long?
That was 10 years ago.
So you've been doing it for 10 years?
10 years, yeah.
Okay, what is the hardest thing that's happened to you during that time?
So I told you that early Japanese pro wrestling all came from like sumo and judo, right? And so the training methods are still like this. And so what that means is a lot of bullying, a lot of hazing. I don't know if you hear about things like in the sumo world where a couple of young kids have been killed because they've been hit by baseball bats.
I know.
That's real stuff, right? And the judo is the same. Like, I don't know what it is about old school Japanese training, but I had all that, right? When I couldn't do a technique.
Were you the only foreigner there?
The only foreigner. When I couldn't do a technique properly, the head teacher kicked me as hard as he could, sorry. That's okay. I thought about giving up at that time as well. I was like, oh, do I need to take this? I'm not Japanese, you know, why do I need to take this from these guys? That's like, you know what, I'll just stick it out and see what happens.
Something else came up. It had to be more than just that.
The desire to make it.
Did you ever think about your dad during that?
I told him when I first started wrestling, I said, hey Dad, guess what? I'll never forget, I was on Skype with him. I said, hey, I'm gonna become a pro wrestler, I'm gonna do wrestling training. And he goes, oh yeah, and then he changed the topic completely. No acknowledgement.
So that made you kind of mad?
Not mad, but just,
just
like, oh, again.
Okay.
It's just hard to get any kind of acknowledgement from me. It's just, I don't know, it's just
I got it.
That old school,
I hear.
Really old school.
Has he ever given you acknowledgement up till now? It hasn't come yet?
Maybe once.
Okay.
This is a funny story. I was back in Australia in September, and I did a pro wrestling show in Australia, and I do it just basically for my friends and my family. It's a great way to see everybody. They come down. My mom is a massive fan of my pro wrestling, right? In her house, like, my photos are everywhere. My sisters call it the Rionne Shrine. It's every clipping or photo she's got everywhere. And so I do it basically for her. And my nephews are young, and get to see.
So she makes sure that she knows she loves what you're doing.
She loves what
she has
my
100%
biggest supporter.
You don't have anything to worry about, because that's all. A man, I always told my wife this. The only thing a man needs to know is that his mother loves him unconditionally, and he can conquer the world.
Yeah. It's so
Dad
true.
isn't really that important.
No.
He really isn't.
No.
He might piss you off, but if you didn't have the love of your mother.
Yeah. It's so true.
Don't you think so?
Yeah. But the funny story I was going to say is that he refused to come to any of my shows for so long. And I said, come on, Dad. Like, sometimes I poke him, like, come on, come down. You know, when are you going to see me wrestle again? You're not coming to Japan anytime soon. And nope, not going. Well, anyway, this one time in September, he finally, for whatever reason, decided he was going to come down. And even to the day before, he's like, I'm not going. My little sister dragged him down there. And he sits there like the whole time like this. Because I was on last, right? The main event. Because, being in Japan and being a wrestler, is they really look up to you a lot. Because, like, Japan is kind of like the mecca for, if you're not in WWE, Japan is kind of the mecca of wrestling in the world. And then he's sitting there and he's like this. As soon as I come out, I see him and he stands up. He crosses his arms like that. And for the whole match, he's standing and watching. Standing and watching. I can see him from the ring.
You couldn't get any more salute.
You can see I get a bit emotional. That was the acknowledgement.
He gave you the most he could give you, and that meant a lot.
That's the acknowledgement.
He stood up and
you could see it makes me emotional.
Beautiful.
I'm an emotional person. That's why I became a documentary filmmaker.
That is so beautiful.
Yeah. So.
Well, your documentary, before I say anything else, put tears in my eyes at the end of it.
Thank you.
You did that so well. That's why you saw the way I said I have to tell him right now before it comes. I kid you not. And I get emotional easily too, but it has to be good.
Right. Yeah.
When I see love and someone putting that much care in something, you did not miss a lick.
Yeah. Thank you.
The team you put together to make that work, it worked. And I see your wife was in it too, because she was the producer.
She produced it.
I saw that.
Yeah,
I saw that.
Yeah, she produced it.
I figured that had to be your wife.
Yeah.
And you're the director. I mean, you did a great job.
Yeah.
Well, so give me a little bit more about it. So your dad standing up like that. Tell me, get more a little bit in detail.
Oh, well, and then afterwards, he made a comment to my sister. He's like, "Oh, I wouldn't like to get kicked by him." So that's as much as it gets. There's no more.
That's
that was
so good.
it.
That's good.
And when I sat down with him afterwards and in the living room, I said, "Was there anything you want to know about, like what I was doing?" No. Back to the TV. Nothing.
Well, how was Mom? Let's go to Mom.
Mom, she's the biggest, the one you can, and also her and my sister, who I told you was 40, but 4 or 5 forever.
Right. Was she there?
They're all there.
Okay.
She was the loudest in the room. The two of them.
She went nuts. If you didn't win, she was going to come in there and help you.
She was going to come. And here's a good story. When I won the championship in Tokyo, in Korakuen Hall, so I was an Australian fighting another Australian in Tokyo for an Australian championship on Anzac Day. And Anzac is the Australian New Zealand Armed Services all basically a bunch of Australians and New Zealanders all got killed together in World War One, and we have an Anzac Day, which is kind of like a Memorial Day, I guess,
Yes,
for you.
yes,
That's
yes.
our big day. We remember the servicemen and women in Australia. So on Anzac Day, 2 Australians fighting for an Australian title in Tokyo. My mum is in the crowd, and after I won it, I got her in to the ring, and the whole crowd is going, "Mama, mama, mama." So she had her moment, and she tells everybody about it. And that was 10 years ago, almost 9 years
That's
ago.
beautiful.
She tells everybody about it.
Why wouldn't she?
Yeah, she's
A baby
so,
boy? What are you
yeah,
talking
yeah.
about?
So there you
You
go.
know
I'm
what they
getting-
say? I heard someone say this the other day, and it almost put a tear in my eye. They said that for a son, particularly the first one, his first true love is his mother. And for a mother, her last true love is her son.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah.
Oh. That's
Well,
all man needs.
we went through a lot of similar things with that the girls didn't get. You know, with dealing with my father for whatever reason, he wanted to treat me and my mother one way, and
Treat the girls with all
girls
his love.
all his love. But we didn't really get that. So we have a lot in common.
I hear you.
You know, so
I hear you. But
we
you
have
have each other.
We have each other.
That's
yeah.
what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah.
That's all you need.
There we go.
Shoot, who cares? The rest of
Yeah.
the world can go away.
Yeah.
Shoot, you got
Yeah.
each other. That's beautiful.
Yeah. So
Wow, you raised a good son.
yeah, thank you.
He's good. No, I'm telling your mother right now.
Okay, yeah.
That is beautiful.
Yeah, I'll have to send it to her now, so
she'll see it.
she'll be telling everybody on Facebook about the interview.
That is beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so after that, so then you're here in Japan. How did you meet your wife? Let's go into that.
through Aikido.
she
yeah.
does Aikido?
Well, no, her daughter was doing it. Yeah, she was
Talk to me.
Yeah, well, just a single mother with her daughter doing Aikido, and just I spotted her and talked to her, and there's not much to say, really. That's just
How long ago was that?
that was 2007.
When did you get married?
Oh, not long ago, actually. We were because of my wrestling career.
I see.
They had their thing, we had our thing, but I had my wrestling. That was the big thing for me. So as long as we took care of each other, she knew that wrestling was everything.
To you.
She understood. She was supportive, very supportive.
Right.
And then when I realized that wrestling is not the center of the world, 2017 or so, that's when we decided to make it forever.
Right. Do you have children of your own?
No,
Or
no,
biological
no,
kids?
not yet.
You're happy with the one you have?
Yeah, well, I mean, my wife's a little bit older than me.
Okay.
So the boat may have sailed a little bit because I was so focused on wrestling.
Right.
Right.
I
So
see.
that's okay. That's
okay.
I wouldn't have become a wrestler if I had kids at that age.
And if you did, it would have been hard for them. Been very, very hard.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah,
So now let's get into this part. Your real passion right now, that the film the documentary you did. Let's talk about that.
Well, I'd always
What
wanted.
made you decide? Yeah, you decided to do it because of your wife?
No, nothing.
Okay.
Completely,
All right.
completely random. This is just life pieces falling in the right places at the right time. I'd always wanted with the martial arts. That's why I said like everything's connected. I always wanted to be an action star, and then I just gave that up and wanted to be an action filmmaker. But then I kind of realized, well, it started during COVID. We lost a lot of work. I had decided to open up my company, Japan Media Services, because I had to transition out of wrestling. And basically, I got some good advice from an Australian friend of mine who said, like, just make a homepage, call it like something that's easy to find on Google when people do it. So I was like, okay, Japan Media, okay, services, all right, that. List up everything that you think you can do or you can outsource. And so I did that, and my company grew from basically a homepage, right? So what happened was I was filming different random jobs here and there, working as an assistant director and learning on the side, and then kind of built up my skills a little bit. And then COVID hit, and we lost a lot of work. And then I started getting a lot of work in 2021, that things related to documentaries, interviews, Tokyo B-roll, we call it, like shots of Tokyo that I would have to send, because during COVID, people couldn't send their film crews here.
Okay.
So they needed people on the ground who were bilingual, who could send the footage back to the UK or back to America. So I started getting a lot of work because Japan was closed. And then I got one job with the BBC, and I made a short documentary, 6 minutes long, about the aging population. And I'd also done a job for the Fukushima government, where I was selected out of more than 100 people. My treatment was selected to, it was about lifting the import ban on Fukushima food. And because the Olympics got postponed, was it September 2021, the Olympics?
2021, yes.
All the foreign dignitaries were coming over.
Right.
So Fukushima figured this is a great time to show that Fukushima food is safe. So they hired me to make a PR video that looks like a documentary. That was the whole thing. It had to look like a documentary, but it's PR. We have these things that we need to say in it, right? And basically the food is safe. So I made this documentary, 15 minutes long, and it was so successful that 5 countries lifted their ban. That's millions of dollars to the Fukushima economy, thanks to my little old video. And it's all in the news. Taiwan lifted their ban, the US lifted their ban, UK and Europe lifted their bans. I don't want to say directly because of my video, but it has to be. Because
that's the only way they could see anything.
Because I did it all in English, and actually it was a funny thing because when we had the initial Zoom meeting, okay, we've accepted you, Mr. McAvoy, director. Okay, we had this initial Zoom meeting with the company that hired me, which was an ad agency. One of the dudes said, "You're a pro wrestler, I know you." I was like, "Whoa." He's like, "You're Fujiwara Rionne, like you're Fujiwara." He's like, "I'm a massive fan of you." I was only supposed to direct it. And when he found me, he's like, "Oh my God, you have to be in it. And then you have to be the narrator." I was like, "What, really?" Okay, and I was hoping to get extra money, but they didn't give me any extra money. But I was like, "Yeah, all right, sure." So I was in it as well.
And narrated.
And narrated it, and directed it, and edited it, and
did everything.
Everything. That was the start of like, okay, maybe I got this documentary thing down. Maybe being a documentary filmmaker is probably what I was probably supposed to do.
So you don't have a team or a group of people that work with you?
I hire freelancers.
Okay.
But this documentary that you saw, I did that 99.9% of myself. Oh. Nobody helped me on that, and that's just because it was a project of passion. No one paid me for that. That was just, I want to help these mothers, right? So I did everything. I mean, I'm talking like everything. Like I said that my wife produced it, but like she came in at the end when I had tunnel vision, and I couldn't see the bush for the trees, kind of thing, right? And I was like, oh, this is not the order. It's got to be. And she basically said like, okay. She stood behind me. And he's like, all right, what if you put that there?
Got you.
What if you do that?
That happens.
That's what that's the producer's job.
I hear you.
But right. Yeah, I mean, I filmed all of that myself. I did all the lighting. I did all the sound. I did the camera work. I directed all the interviews. I drove to Ishikawa 7 hours, Nagano, everything.
You did a fantastic.
Thank you.
I'm saying that as someone I've had it as a passion to do media work for a long time. But this is the first time I got pushed into it by my assistant, my right arm. Okay. She pushed me to do this after COVID.
Okay.
And
that makes sense.
I love doing it. And I can see when people are really good at what they do.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
That was good.
Yeah, thank you. So I'd done the Fukushima job, and that was quite successful. The BBC jobs came, 2 of those came in, and they were really highly rated. We made a really nice one about the aging population. And then one of my friends, you might have seen another producer on there. His name was Frank. He's a Californian guy. He just moved back actually. Mm-hmm. We was sitting down for coffee one day whilst I had just finished the BBC job, and he's like, "Dude, you're really talented." He's like, "How do you get these NHK?" And I also did NHK World jobs, a couple filming for NHK World. Right. BBC's, "How do you get these jobs?" I was like, "I don't know. They come to me, and maybe it's because I'm on the ground here." And he's like, "Dude, we'd always want to do stuff together." Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He's like, "We should do a documentary together." And then randomly, I had heard a topic of a single mother. It's a really horrible story. I don't know if you want to hear it or not, but you
can tell me.
Well, this single mother was a friend of my wife's. Her husband, their son got cancer. The husband drained her bank account, took off with another woman, and left her to take care of the boy. That's his own son. I was telling him that story because the mother said, "No, please don't, very Japanese, don't get involved. It's okay, I'll be okay, I'm okay." And then I told him that story, and he was raised by a single mother in California, and he grew up very, very poor as well. And it just was like this. This is what we got to do. So single mothers. I didn't know anything about single mothers. It's when I'm getting a bit teary again because I heard all these poor women. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I see some of the poorest people in Japan, and Japanese people themselves are very proud. They're very proud people.
Yes, it's built into society,
and they don't want to let anybody know that they've got any. So anyway, but I didn't know anything. I was like, really? I mean, I know that story, the cancer story, and that's just that's really bad luck and really horrible. But like, really, poverty in Japan? What? Japan is not poor. It's the 3rd biggest economy in the world. It used to be 2nd. You don't put poverty and Japan in the same sentence. You just don't.
It's hard.
Even for us,
right.
Like we just, Tokyo is such a beautiful city, and that's because it's hidden poverty. The boy sitting next to you on the train might have a nice sweater on,
That's right.
but he might not have had breakfast.
That's right.
It's called hidden poverty, and that's the theme, the real theme of the documentary. It's a hidden poverty.
Right.
And Japanese single mothers, and you know what? It's not just single mothers. It is single fathers. They're doing it tough too.
I know.
But they're not doing it as tough as the mothers.
That's for
They're
sure.
not. The poverty levels are completely different. It's still a very male-dominated society. Just saying that you're a single mother at work is enough to be like, oh,
Right.
you
Make
better-
you a leopard. Yeah.
you better quit. Right? But if you're a husband, if you're a single father, and you say that you're a single father, whoa, ganbatte yo, yeah, good, yeah. And it's very different. It's another topic for another day, the single fathers, and the topic of dual custody, parents running off and not letting children see the fathers or their mothers. You know, that's a whole another topic for a lot of people said to me, like a couple of people borderline attacked me for the documentary. Why didn't you talk about these mothers that take their kids away from their fathers? You know, like there was a French gentleman who did a hunger strike.
Wait, who's seen that? That hasn't been put out yet.
Oh, well, the trailer. They just saw the
Oh, the
trailer.
trailer, just the trailer,
Just the
okay.
trailer was enough to get.
Okay.
It's a very sensitive topic. It
I would imagine
stirs a
it would
lot
be.
of emotions.
Oh, sure. Everyone had their own.
Everyone
situation,
has
right?
their own, and so I just explained to them, look, well, you can only cover so much in one film. And this time I decided to dedicate this one to single mothers. That's a great topic. And you can never engage with them, you can never get angry, you just have to understand that they're coming from a place of pain as well.
Right.
And
They have their own experience. It's from the viewpoint they have, which is legit. But
right.
like you said, you can't do everything
Right.
at one time. It takes time to cover.
So back to putting those two, Japan and poverty, together, I was like, no. But the further that I dug, the more I realized, like, holy shit, there are some serious social and economic problems going on in this country that are completely swept under the rug, under the tatami. I guess you could say, being a Japanese, so many things like problems, like the suicide rate here is high. Compared to other countries, I don't know how high, but I mean, there's more than 500 people a week committing suicide in Japan. The whole deal with the parents taking the kid and disappearing, and the other spouse never seeing their kid again. That's a massive issue. Single mothers is a completely thing. So I decided to tackle
the single mothers
one
was-
problem at a time.
I hear you.
One problem at a time. But I found my life work. That's raising issues in Japanese society that need to be raised, because the Japanese aren't going to do them. No one could have made this film as a Japanese. The Japanese couldn't have made that film.
The stigmatism would be too hard on them.
I made this as from outside the fishbowl, looking down, having no knowledge of the topic, zero knowledge. I had no idea about anything about single mothers, right? I wrote a treatment and I didn't include child poverty. Like 1 in 7 Japanese children are in poverty. That some parents can't buy a bag of rice to feed their family, a 3,000 yen bag of rice. You know, they can't afford that. So like you saw in the film, right? They can pay for 50 yen bowl of rice.
Right.
But they can't afford a 3,000 yen. I mean, that's poor.
Right.
That's poor, and I didn't know any of that. I started from zero with a treatment that didn't cover half of what's in the film because I didn't know it. And that's the great thing about documentaries. The people tell the stories.
They do.
And my documentary has no slant.
No,
I'm not right-winged, I'm not left-winged. I don't care about any of that. I just wanted to make it, this is what's happening.
You let them tell their story.
Tell their story, but the most importantly, this is what's happening, and then you get the experts. Dr. Jeff Kingston from Temple University, or the Japan Women's University Professor Zor. Well, this is what's happening, and this is what we need to do.
Before I end the podcast, I always like to ask this question. Knowing what you know now, what you've built up, you're 41, you said, right? If you could go back in time and see the younger you, what time would you go back to, and what advice would you give yourself?
I wouldn't go back. You have to experience everything for yourself. I wouldn't say anything. I wouldn't change a thing for the world. I am who I am because of Japan.
There you go.
I am who I am because of Japan. I get a bit emotional back. It's I am who I am. And you know what? During the earthquake, when the earthquake first hit, I mentioned Eric that had passed away, the kickboxer. Unfortunately, sudden heart attack despite being a professional athlete at like 38. It was a massive shock. But he said to me, I said, dude, are you gonna leave? Because the French all took off. Remember that? The French all
And
left.
the Germans.
The Germans. A lot of Australians went back. A lot of my American friends
They went back too.
Went
That's
back.
right. That's right.
Me and Eric, we sat in the Yogi Park. We didn't know if the nuclear fallout was coming to
Right.
Tokyo. We didn't know. And he said to me, you know what? Japan's been good to me. I ain't going anywhere. I was like, you know what? Yeah, I'm gonna stick it out too. So I
will say I joined your group because I was here. I was right in this club.
Okay.
And I came every single day. And Ambassador Roos, I called him. I had my general manager call him. And I said, find out if he's leaving or not, or if his wife is going to leave. And Ambassador Roos said, no, he's not leaving, neither is his wife, Susan. And he came here once a week.
Okay.
And I was here every day.
Yeah.
I was president at that time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I want to tell you what, I want to thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Fine,
And I
I'm
will
so
have
happy
you on
to
again.
get to meet you and get to
Same
chat
here.
with you. Yeah.
We're going to do it again.
Thank you.
We'll do it again.
Yeah.
I want to thank all of you for watching this podcast. Remember that it is an audio podcast as well, so on all the platforms. So make sure you check that out if you don't have time to watch this or you want to hear this podcast while you're driving. Outside of that, remember, it's all unknown, so continue to reach for the stars because you're too blessed to be stressed.